thanks for your time. I guess my first question has to be the decision of National League North and National League South to null and void their seasons. What effect could that have on your league?
I think it puts into context I suppose the issues that the leagues have been under, the North, the South, and the Premier, in terms of how we've been run, on how they've been led, and all things in between. You know, we've had a year since the first lockdown, and if I'm honest, we don't seem to have learnt many of the lessons at chairman and chief exec and board level, and tonight's a culmination, really, where the resolutions and the votes have been counted. But, you know, I don't think the three leagues have ever been more divided. The resolution certainly didn't bring the clubs together. And I think that's a real shame, because, you know, there's 66 clubs, and there's 66 clubs that are blameless. Some are at the top, some are at the bottom. Some are financially more viable than others. But the resolutions haven't helped that. You know, you've now got 66 different opinions from 66 fan bases, as I say. And so I think it's a really sad night, because the North and South, there's a lot of good clubs who desperately wanted to carry on. But there was an awful lot of clubs that simply couldn't carry on. And there's the whole problem in a nutshell from the board and the chairman and the chief exec, who, if I'm honest, just perhaps has come up short.
I mean, I'll take some clubs that I know well: Hemel Hempstead, Concord Rangers, Chorley, who I've had the privilege of covering in the FA Cup this season in the National League North. You know, there's clubs, Hampton and Richmond, another one, you know, where there's some really good people, some really, really good people. And I know that most of those clubs, they'd have wanted to play on. What does this decision do for non-league football? Because it was so close to us getting out of this, and the Prime Minister setting out a roadmap next week. Have they gone early on this?
No, I don't think they've gone early. I think the problem is the National League Board has gone late on every decision it's made. You know, it went late on when we started in October, because it felt that there'd be fans back in the ground. You know, but they got it wrong. It went, you know, we've had the loans and the grants fiasco. But, you know, no disrespect. You know, they keep saying that we were promised grants, but they can't tell us who promised us grants. You know, I spoke to ministers. I've spoken to these things a year ago, remember? The league was saying that the government had, you know, in June was saying that the government had given them a directive that Step 2 wasn't elite sport. And yet the truth was the government hadn't given them any such directive at all. I mean, it was a barefaced lie. And then when the MPs weighed in and said, Step 2 is elite, they caved, and suddenly, you know, so this whole thing has been a war of words, really, from the playoffs last June until now. And I'm not sure, as we sit here tonight, there's any winners and losers. There's just losers. You know, the North and the South have been shut down. And you can't blame the clubs who needed to be shut down, and you can't blame clubs who had a chance at promotion, who wanted to roll the dice, and that's what we're in it for. We're in it football to try and succeed. For our
that was going to be my question, Dan. Are you in football to succeed, or as it looks like tonight, because of the decision made, and as you rightly said there, the argument about the grants and the loans, is football at your level and at non-league level just about money?
It's about survival, Moose. You know, and anybody who thinks at this point it's about anything more forgets we've been in a pandemic for a year. We have the rules that the rest of the country has to abide with, but we need to be there. We need to be there when this was all come through, and perhaps those sensibilities have been forgotten, you know, in a year. You know, 700 odd people died today, and we're sort of hardened to it now. It's not a shock anymore. But there's still people there grieving tonight, and we forget about it. You know, there's 2 million people when furlough ends are going to be back on the dole. And these are social issues that need to be addressed. And these clubs, well, the point is, we had a board that could have made decisions intelligently, just like I do in my business, just like I do for my football club. You're in positions of leadership to lead. And there's times when you need to lead. And they haven't done it. So tonight, you've got a split non-league community. No one's talking about the clubs at step 3 and below. Where are they going to go now? Step 2's now finished. And now it'll be ratified by the FA. But you can't blame a Concord Rangers or a St Albans City or a Hemel Hempstead or a Havant or a Hampton. These are good people. You know, some are having to shut down because they need to, and others are trying to have a go because, you know, and let's not pretend it's not to do with your league position, you know, because we all know.
Exactly. I mean, let's say, you got a good chance of getting in the playoffs. Who knows? Be the 3rd year in a row, which is brilliant for your club. But let's say you're Barnet tonight, you're Dover, or you're Kings Lynn, or you're Woking or Wealdstone, down towards the bottom. I mean, A, good argument for saying that there should be no relegation. If the leagues below can't finish, there shouldn't be relegation. And B, if that happens, then where's the integrity of the league? Because clubs could just furlough their players and play, you know, butchers, painters and candlestick makers for the rest of the season.
Yeah, but you can also look at it before it gets ratified by the league. You can look at it and say, well, the National League has 23 teams in it because of the demise of Macclesfield last year. I think the North and the South have 22 and 21 teams in their divisions. So there can still be relegation if people want it, with teams going down. And you can, even if you had just one relegation spot, it would keep the integrity of the National League. I know what you're worried about.
Turkeys don't vote for Christmas, Danny.
The Turkeys have voted for Christmas because we voted, the consensus is that we're playing on. What you're saying is now that the rules are, what you're saying is 7 or 8 clubs may decide, quite rightly, that they can't get relegated. So what they're going to do, they're going to furlough their players and they're going to bring in their youth teams and whatever. And suddenly you're going to get cricket scores. And that's really what, if I've read that or listened to the question correctly, you're saying that's where the integrity will fall apart. Mm-hmm. Well, again, you can still create relegation into step 2 because the league format allows you to do that. But that's a different thing. That's when it would probably come to a different vote. But if, for instance, 5 or 6 clubs decide to do as you suggest, then there would probably be other clubs like myself would need to think long and hard about what we did due to the actions of others. But I'm not here to judge other clubs. I think it's a sad, sad day for non-league football. But at the same time, for some clubs, it's a really important day because, you know, today they've been saved. You know, they're not suffering sanctions by not fulfilling fixtures. They know where they stand. They can start to get ready for next season. You know, they can look at what investment they need to perhaps put into their infrastructures. We're all one nation here. We've all been through a pandemic. Hopefully this vaccine is going to bring us out of it at the end of it, you know. And I've always said for myself, it was very, very important that when we came out at the end of it, that one, the club was still here, the community was still very much involved, and the club was still at the heart of it. And that's the one thing that I'm determined to do. But we're also, you know, I'm also very, very lucky, Moose. You know, I'm 22 years in. So there's 22 years of experience and of infrastructure and build and investment. And that's held us in good stead in a pandemic. But again, you know, for some of these clubs in the north and south, they've been awfully let down. And I'm not going to say by this government, because they haven't been. This government has been outstanding to us all, with furloughing, with the local councils, what they've done with our rent rebates, and, you know, the things they've done over VAT, and the thing. It's just an immense amount of things which, you know, we can all be thankful for. All we needed, I think, was a little bit more guidance from our National League executive and its chairman, and I don't feel we've received that.
Last one then, and this is very much from an outsider's point of view. You're involved day to day in non-league football. I'm just an observer who occasionally gets in the boardroom. From an outsider's point of view, the strength of anything is its foundations. League Two has stopped. Step 2 has stopped, and probably the steps below them might take the same view they did this time last year. So where does that leave the strength or the future of non-league football? Because some people would say that tonight is an example of it maybe crumbling.
I think we need to look at a complete overhaul at the top. I think we need to understand there needs to be experience and almost like a working party, and maybe, you know, a new charter drawn up. We need to look at things. We started this season, remember, we didn't even know the rules of our competition. Did we honestly think we were suddenly going to get to the end of May and there was going to be no shutdown for COVIDs or lockdowns or whatever? You know, we should have clearly known whether, you know, if 66%, for instance, on a points per game ratio would have been good enough to count, for instance, for promotions or relegations. And that could have been ratified by the clubs with resolutions, could have gone to the FA to be ratified. It could have been ratified by the EFL. You know, we started the season. We didn't know about grants. We didn't know about loans. We didn't know about how the season was going to end. And all those decisions need to be made at board level and executive level. So the truth of the matter is, it doesn't all need looking at. We certainly need, for me, on a personal level, we need a National League chairman that works for the National League. He's not sitting on the board of the Rugby League. He's not sitting on the Commonwealth Committee of 2022. He hasn't, you know, I'm not interested in how many books he writes. I'm not interested in how many columns he pens for the Liverpool Echo or whatever. I'm interested in doing his job for me. I'm not interested in having 20% of him. I'm interested in having 100% of him. And we need people fighting for the good of non-league football and understanding at step 1 and 2, that's where, you know, all the steps, the 800 other clubs, they're all trying to get to those steps. And we need to be, you know, also, you know, we need to be beacons of hope for them. You know, I come from a small club, and there's no point people, you know, knocking our little club. The fact of the matter is, you know, we couldn't be more thrilled to be going and locking arms with Notts County and Chesterfield and Stockport. And, you know, these are big, big football clubs. But they deserve to, you know, they deserve the governance of this league to be at the same level as the EFL. And I'm not sure at the moment that we can say that we're not crumbling. And as your question was, is it crumbling? I'd have to say at this point it is. I'd also have to say that they've brought in a new general manager in Mark Ives, who's really done his very, very best to try and communicate with everyone. But as you can imagine, he's a swimmer swimming against the tide. The die was cast long before he got here. But it's going to take a sea change at the top. And it's going to take all clubs at step 2 and step 1 and all the supporters to come together, because the 66 clubs are not to blame here. We're all doing our best. We're all just trying to find a way to support our clubs, staff, players, you know, and create something, you know, good and something to look forward to for our town when the pandemic's over. And this mess, remember, is just about to get worse, because 7 clubs, if you look at the vote tonight, of the 23 National League clubs, 2 didn't vote. Wrexham abstained. and 7 have voted to null and void, and 13 have voted to continue. Now that tells you already the next phase of this mess is just about to get started. And anyone who thinks that's not about to happen is living in cloud cuckoo land, because we know that Dover have explained their predicament. We know that we've already seen the statements from Wealdstone and Kings Lynn. These people all have valid points. And, you know, if there is no relegation, exactly back to your point earlier, is where's the integrity of this league in the bottom half if these people cannot afford to put out teams that can compete? They'll furlough their staff and their players, and they'll put out their youth teams or they'll ask the National League, well, what are you going to do about it if we don't fulfil our fixtures? And that's coming. And anybody who thinks it isn't, again, it's probably just bought their club or only been in the job 5 minutes.